The morning sun peeked through the curtains, casting a soft glow on the worn-out carpet of my tiny apartment. It was a typical Tuesday morning, and I had just finished a grueling shift as a warehouse worker. But today was different. Today held the promise of something new, something potentially life-changing. My name is Anthony Ramirez to be precise. I'm just an ordinary guy trying to make ends meet in this chaotic world. But today, I had 2 job interviews lined up in a city a few hours away. The catch? I had to drive there because flying was out of the question, money was tight, and every penny counted. I chugged down a lukewarm cup of coffee, hoping it would jolt me awake, and glanced at the clock. It was almost noon. I figured I'd hit the road after grabbing a quick bite to eat. Those interviews could be my ticket to a better life, a chance to escape the monotony of my current job. As I wolfed down a sandwich, my mind raced with anticipation and nerves. What if I screwed up? What if I wasn't good enough? Pushing aside those doubts, I gathered my things and headed out the door, my beat-up car waiting patiently in the parking lot. The drive ahead loomed like an endless expanse of uncertainty, but I pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the road ahead. Little did I know, this journey would take a turn I never saw coming. The first few hours of the drive passed uneventfully. I had the radio playing softly in the background, keeping me company as the miles flew by. But as the afternoon wore on, fatigue began to set in. My eyelids grew heavy, and the steady drumming of rain against the windshield only added to my drowsiness. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the exhaustion, but it clung to me like a stubborn shadow. Just when I thought I couldn't go on any longer, I spotted something peculiar on the side of the road, a figure trudging along in a raincoat, shoulders hunched against the downpour. I frowned, glancing at the clock. It was getting late, and there were no cars parked nearby. What was someone doing out here in the middle of nowhere? Against my better judgment, I pulled over, my heart pounding in my chest. As I rolled down the window, raindrops splattered against my face, mingling with the sweat on my brow. "Hey, you okay?" I called out, my voice barely audible above the roar of the storm. The man nodded, his features obscured by the hood of his raincoat. "Yeah, just got caught in the rain," he replied, his voice muffled but steady. I hesitated for a moment, debating whether to offer him a ride. It was getting late, and the storm showed no signs of abating. Plus, the sight of a lone figure walking along the deserted highway sent a shiver down my spine. "Need a lift?" I asked, gesturing towards the passenger seat. The man hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if weighing his options. Finally, he nodded, a grateful smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Thanks, I appreciate it." I unlocked the passenger door, and he climbed in, water dripping from his coat onto the floor mats below. As he settled into the seat, I couldn't help but notice the weariness in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. It was as if he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Long day, I ventured, trying to break the ice as I pulled back onto the road. The man nodded, his gaze fixed on the rain-streaked window. You could say that he replied cryptically, his voice tinged with exhaustion. I glanced at him, sensing there was more to the story than he was letting on. But before I could press him further, he let out a heavy sigh and closed his eyes, leaning his head against the headrest. "Mind if I rest for a bit?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I shook my head, a pang of sympathy tugging at my heartstrings. "Go ahead," I said softly, turning my attention back to the road ahead. And so we drove on in silence, the only sound the steady rhythm of the rain against the roof of the car. Little did I know, this chance encounter would set into motion a chain of events that would alter the course of my life forever. As we continued our journey, the storm raged on outside, each passing mile cloaked in a veil of darkness and uncertainty. The man beside me had fallen into a fitful slumber, his breathing shallow and uneven. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that there was more to this encounter than met the eye. But try as I might, I couldn't put my finger on it. All I knew was that I had to get to my interviews, that my future depended on it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached the outskirts of the city. The rain had tapered off to a drizzle, the neon lights of the cityscape shimmering in the distance like a beacon of hope. I glanced over at the man beside me, his features softened in the dim light of the dashboard. He stirred slightly, as if sensing we had arrived at our destination. "We're here," I said, shaking him gently by the shoulder. He blinked blearily, his gaze unfocused for a moment before snapping into sharp clarity. "Right," he muttered, straightening up in his seat. I pulled over to the curb, my heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. This was it, the moment of truth. I turned to face the man beside me, extending my hand in gratitude. "Thanks for the company," I said, my voice tinged with emotion. He smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his face. "No, thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me." With that, he opened the door and stepped out into the night, disappearing into the sea of bustling humanity. I watched him go, a sense of gratitude swelling in my chest. As I made my way to the first interview, my mind buzzed with the events of the day. Despite the strangeness of it all, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything happened for a reason, that this encounter was more than just a chance meeting on a rainy night. And as I walked into that interview room, my head held high and my heart full of hope, I knew one thing for certain: whatever the future held, I was ready to face it head-on, armed with nothing but determination and a belief in the power of second chances.